Thanks, Alan. It's really a pleasure to be here on a sunny Sunday afternoon, or Saturday afternoon, and glad that everybody's here to make it. And it's a great turnout in I think, a very early stage of this process. So it's important to be active and aware early on before things start to heat up on this project. I'm Stewart, and as Alan mentioned, I'm the Member of Parliament for Burnaby Douglas. And really this event, the big Kinder Morgan adventure started for me about 2 days after my election in May, where I was contacted by Kinder Morgan. President Ian Anderson flew in to meet with me about and to tell me about this project, the proposed project. I did have some guidance from Bill Sixay, who was my predecessor here, and he said really with the existing infrastructure, the current Kinder Morgan pipeline and the Chevron refinery, most folks from what he found were okay with that. They understood that you needed local refineries to provide gasoline for the lower mainland, and you needed the pipeline to get the oil to the refinery. But two things have really changed since the election. The first is, of course, the plan by Kinder Morgan to build a brand new pipeline along the existing right-of-way, or as close as they can. And the second is changes in the way that the recent budget bill has come through and changed the way the public will be able to participate in these processes. So for me, this adventure started last May. I was kind of just getting my feet wet and the whole thing, but really it started to ramp up for me in November of last year. I was appointed as the Associate Critic for Natural Resources for the NDP and the official opposition, and moved to the Standing Committee on Natural Resources. So while I was there, I talked the Conservatives into having a small report on pipelines and refineries. So we could really learn more about this whole process, about what pipelines were, what's bitumen, how does that all work, how does the export, and we did. So we had a good report on that, had a number of witnesses in from I tried to call mostly academics, that's kind of, that's my bias anyway, but we did have major industry leaders and unions, and etc. So that really helped us fill out my knowledge about this area, and then knowing with constant contact with Kinder Morgan and Chevron and others that this was coming forward. So I'm happy to answer questions, as I do have quite a lot of information on this, but I'll just give you the details of what's happening right now. So Kinder Morgan is trying to expand build a new pipeline from Edmonton to Burnaby. This pipeline, when added to the capacity of the current pipeline, it'll be about 750,000 barrels of oil a day will be moving down this pipeline. So in terms of how it's rolling through, Kinder Morgan last Friday went to the National Energy Board to start phase 1 of this process. There'll be 3 phases. The first phase will determine how much they can charge for people to transport oil down their pipeline. And so this is, I kind of equate it to a new bridge. A bridge would have cars crossing, and these cars would pay a certain toll in order to cross the bridge. Well, this is kind of what happens with Kinder Morgan's pipeline. If you move a barrel of oil down this pipeline, it will cost you a certain amount to do this. So if Chevron wants to move oil down the pipeline, they have to pay Kinder Morgan to do so. And so this first phase in the application process is for the National Energy Board to determine how much can Kinder Morgan pay charge per barrel for oil to come down the pipeline. It also determines who can buy this oil, or who will have access to this oil. The second phase of the process will be when Kinder Morgan decides the general route of the pipeline. So what this is, it's about a 150-meter, not a right-of-way, but I would call it, I've labeled it a potential expropriation zone. That this 150-meter wide corridor, within that's where the new pipeline will go. So that's a fairly significant phase. All these are significant, but the second phase is very significant because when the National Energy Board approves that 150-meter corridor, if they do, then Kinder Morgan is enabled to really negotiate with homeowners, negotiate with municipalities, and if they don't get what they want, they can trigger the expropriation process on those particular pieces of property. The third phase is where they do the details, the very nitty-gritty of negotiating with each of the individual property owners and municipalities along the way. So 3 phases, all of them are public. So there is an ability for public to participate in each one of these 3 phases. Kinder Morgan filed on Friday just before the long weekend. I've said that I will intervene in all three of these processes if I'm allowed to, and that is a question of who will be able to participate in these processes now that the federal government has just recently changed the rules around these three things. So to bring you back to, so we're in phase one right now, and people are saying, well, the consultation doesn't start until the fall, or there's no formal application until next September. That's not right. We are in the first phase, and Kinder Morgan will be going to the National Energy Board. We will probably know the process by which this is happening over the next few weeks. There will be, the National Energy Board will decide if and where public hearings will be held. I think it's important for people to kind of start thinking about, if you're interested in getting involved in this process, thinking about getting involved at this stage, thinking that how, and not to wait for, Kinder Morgan had said they would do their consultation for 18 months. You can also get involved in that. I can imagine, however you decide you want to do things, but I think it is very important for you to be involved in the official process. So the details of phase one, this kind of first phase, we're deciding how much to charge per barrel of oil coming down the pipeline. I've only started reading through the documents. There's a few there. I've had a couple of lawyers that have said that they would help not only me, but others that want to get involved. So I thought the best thing for me to do was read through, apply as an intervener, and then anybody else that wanted to do, I could kind of guide them through the process. So I'm happy to do that. What's happening with this first tolling phase is that both pipelines, the old one and the new one, will be treated as one kind of giant expanded pipeline system. And what Kinder Morgan's proposing is that 80% of the oil, all the product coming down both these pipelines, will really be sold to foreign buyers. 20% of it will be reserved for local buyers. The 80% that's sold, if you buy a big enough chunk of it, you get a discount of about up to as much as 17.5%. So your toll would be reduced by 17.5%. If you're a domestic buyer, you pay a premium of 10%. So we're in this kind of absurd position where the structure that's being put forward to the National Energy Board would have, say, a company based in Malaysia or China or Japan paying a toll that's 17.5% lower than a domestic buyer like Chevron, who would have to pay 10% more. The proposal right now by Kinder Morgan is that someone like Chevron, or a local refinery, would pay almost 30% more than a foreign refinery, which, and this is something that, as we go through this process, these are the types of things that we, local citizens may object to because they think, well, that's not great. And I can tell you why it's not great, because I have been in conversations with Chevron, the local refinery, that is now in a bit of a tizzy because they don't think they might be able to afford this tolling, make it economical for them to continue to operate. I don't want to speak for them, but these are the discussions we've had, that if this goes forward the way it is, they won't be able to afford the toll for the, to pay for the oil as it comes down the pipeline, which means that we could lose our only local refinery and the consequences that come from that, which are, for example, higher gas prices, this very absurd position where we export all our oil, it gets refined somewhere else, and then we buy back the gasoline, which we're familiar with things like softwood lumber and various other commodities that we export. So that's kind of what's happening right now. Now what I have for you is I brought a number of little information booklets that I put together a couple of weeks ago. I've also brought a copy of the pipeline route map, which I can leave here. I've got a couple of copies, so I'm happy to leave them here. Allows you to kind of see where, how does it directly affect you? Is your house or where you rent, is it on the pipeline route? And then if you have questions, of course, I'm happy to help you figure out how this may affect your life as things go forward, and then perhaps how you might participate in the process. But I think I'll leave it there. I've got plenty of other information to pass on, but maybe best to maybe just answer questions. So thanks very much, and I look forward to your questions.